I've written a lot of stories. Some of them I'm very proud of. Others I'm not so proud of. But there are some stories that will haunt me for the rest of my life. And Metamorphosis is one of those stories. Believe me, I started Metamorphosis with wonderful intentions. I had a real big plan for the story. I wanted to have some fun with it, and at first it was great. But then those good intentions led to me irrevocably destroying the story. Allow me to explain what happened. So it all began a long time ago. I was still a freshman in college, and I had a friend named Mika. Mika was an artist on DeviantArt that I'd met. She was very friendly. She was an excellent artist. She liked my writing. We decided to form a team. I would write stories. She would draw pictures for said stories. We'd have a wonderful time. We have a lot of stories under our belt, in fact. Metamorphosis was one of them. We were both fans of the anime Ranma One Half, which is an anime about a young martial artist who, when splashed with cold water, turns into a female. We think it's funny, and I still today think it's funny. And I hear that it's getting a reboot. Hey, that's exciting. But we actually liked the idea of exploring that dynamic. We wanted to tell a story where a boy in a sort of Freaky Friday situation gets turned into a girl and learns some kind of lesson from it when they turn back. That was the goal, and so that was the story we decided to craft. A young man named Chase wakes up one morning in a girl's body, and his parents don't know why. He doesn't know why. It's a complete mystery. And so while they're working to try to figure out what happened and how to reverse it, Chase has to live a lie. He pretends that he, Chase, is sick and unable to go to school. And right now, he is now playing the role of his cousin Cheryl, who has to go to the high school to pick up homework and assignments, who has to, lay low and, try to buy new clothes that she can wear when going out places. Having to go and pretend to be a teacher's assistant at her mom's school that her mom works at so that she can stay close to her mom and get new information. There was a lot of ideas in the story that we wanted to play with, funny scenarios, and that was kind of the goal of the story, creating funny scenarios, having fun with the social dynamic, having some drama, because as Chase learns more and more about the situation with his family and his own social situation back when he was a guy, it kind of shocks him. It's a wonder. Like, for example, he goes to his high school disguised as his cousin Cheryl to pick up assignments, and he always assumed that the school didn't like him, or at least his peers didn't like him, because he was a big, strong, burly guy, and he thought that people were intimidated by him. But it turns out that they actually admired him. A lot of people really looked up to him and saw him as something as a protector, because people didn't want to pick on him, and by proxy didn't want to pick on people around him. And so he's kind of like, wow, people actually liked me. So when he does turn back into a guy at the end of the story, he has a new outlook. He has a new respect for the way people saw him and tries to approach people a little differently. Also, he gets the chance to understand the girl he has a crush on even more. So there was a lot of things within the story that we really wanted to play with, and I think we did explore those very well. Now, a few things happened, though, that kind of killed the story. The first was that Mika and I broke contact. Our friendship ended. That's not the subject of today's video. Don't worry about it. The point is, we stopped communicating. And it became harder to write stories that we worked on together because it was kind of a dual process. We talked about story ideas a lot. We talked about chapters. We talked about direction. And because the whole point of this story was to kind of have fun with various scenarios and build up to the end, without her there to talk about the different scenarios, it kind of became weaker and harder for me to write the story. I thrive off of discussion and brainstorming with other people. I like bouncing ideas off with other people. And without her there and without someone else who was very interested in the story to bounce ideas off of, it became much more difficult. But that wasn't what really killed the story. What really killed the story was my own naivety. It turns out, and I didn't know this at the time, that gender bender fiction is apparently a bit of a fetish for some people. I didn't realize that until people started leaving comments on chapters of the story saying, hey, will Chase go lesbian? Will Chase stay a girl for the rest of the story? Will Chase get pregnant? Will Chase have sex? Will Chase go after a guy? Will Chase do that? And all these questions, I was like, where are these questions coming from? That was never the intention of the story. I never even entertained those ideas. That was never even a thought. And so I kept replying to people saying, no, that's not my plan. That's not my goal. Like, I don't want to go that direction. That's weird. That's not the direction I was thinking of. I was just having fun with different scenarios. We were telling a funny story. I wasn't planning on But people were still asking, will it go this way? Will it go that way? Finally, I ended up sabotaging the story. I made up some random voodoo magical reason why Chase changed and created a clear way for him to change back so that people would know, hey, he's not staying this way. He's changing back. I have an out. And in doing so, I did two things wrong. The first was that I caved to the audience. One thing you should never do as a writer is you should never cave that easily to audience expectation or demand. Now, what I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider your audience. You should consider your audience. But just because your audience demands something for a personal taste reason, that doesn't mean you have to go with it. You should follow the direction you plan to go with your story and see it through. If it's not there's caveats to that in all story writing, and we can explore that in a Raven's writing room perhaps, but the problem was I should have kept it my own story and written it the way I wanted to, regardless of what other people were saying, and not just sabotage it just to make sure they knew, hey, I'm not going your direction, I'm going this direction. I ended up hurting myself more than anything. And the second was I decided to remove some of the vague, mysterious attributes and give a clear, secret reveal. Now, I've said before that vagueness can hurt a story, but at the same time, vagueness isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes when you leave some question marks in the air, people want to know more. They want to ask questions. Like in Freaky Friday, the two characters slam into each other and conking their head somehow makes them swap bodies. We're not really sure how that works. It's just a magical thing that happened, Like, we're not going to sit here and try to guesstimate what caused it. And that's kind of where I wanted to go here. We could have some speculation. We could have maybe it was an act of God. Maybe it was a curse. Maybe it was a wish on a star. I actually dropped little tidbits and hints and red herrings here and there to make people wonder what could have caused the incident. But at the end of the day, when I was writing the story, I wasn't all that concerned about how it happened, just the fact that it happened. He's going to learn from the experience, and he's going to turn back and then use what he learned to better his life going forward. That was the goal. That was the intent. But because I was so afraid of people assuming that I was some fetish writer or wanting to see the story go in a direction that actually disgusted me, I sabotaged the story, and now I can't even look at it anymore. I tried many times to try to finish it. My friend Hannah tried to help me bounce ideas around, but even she wasn't all that invested in the story. And in the end, I just gave up on it. Metamorphosis is a black stain in my writing career. I look back on it now and I think to myself, it could have been so much better. I could have done so much more with the story. I could have followed it through to the ending. But now I just can't write it or look at it now without feeling a little bit ashamed that it got ruined the way it did. And it's my fault, mostly. And ever since then, I've tried to redo Metamorphosis in a sense. I've tried to create stories that follow a similar kind of theme, but none of them have ever captured the same idea. And part of it's because I think I'm trying too hard. Like some of my stories, like Upon the Stars and Nighthawk and Pilgrimage of a Witch, and stories like that have similar ideas and themes behind them, but the funny thing is, they just don't work. None of them work because what I'm doing is I'm trying hard to capture the theme of a previous story without focusing on the current plot and story that I have, and trying to balance the two things just doesn't work. I almost gave up hope until my buddy Aaron encouraged me to try something different, and that got me writing my story, The Sorceress, which I will do another video on later because that story has actually gotten some traction. But back to Metamorphosis. I think the best thing I can say about Metamorphosis is it was very educational for me. It was fun for me because I got to write a unique scenario and create a unique kind of story that I'd never written before, and I learned a lot from the experience, and it was creative. And I think the best advice I can give in that regard is don't be afraid to try new or weird things. Sometimes weird ideas can spawn very entertaining writing projects. But I think I learned far more about what not to do as a writer for Metamorphosis than I did what I should do. With Metamorphosis, I think what I learned most of all is to write what you want and not cave to audience's expectations, especially when you know those expectations are not worth crap. Look, I talk a lot about what Hollywood does with movies and stuff and how they don't listen to fans, like the Star Wars sequels and the Lord of the Rings stuff and all that stuff that they've done recently to ruin franchises. And I stand by what I say in those videos. But the difference is that what they're doing is they're taking an existing IP and doing what they want with it without listening to the fan base who enjoy that IP. This is different. I'm creating a brand new and unique story that I'm trying to do like something fun with and create a whole identity around, try to build some fun scenarios and fun setups and just either laugh at it, cry at it, you know. I wanted to create a drama that had fun, that had laughs, but also had some tears. That was the goal. But I had a lot of people who didn't want to see it for that. They wanted to see it for something far more inappropriate. And I was so afraid of people treating the story that way that I actually hurt the story to keep it from happening. It's kind of like when you're so afraid of your child getting sick or hurt at school that you just keep them sheltered their whole life. Sure, they don't get sick, but at the same time, they don't experience the world and they don't grow up properly. And I think that's what happened with Metamorphosis. It's a disappointment, to be sure, but I learned a lot from it. So it is one that I did want to talk about and share with you guys because I learned something from this, and I hope that you learned something from it too. Do I regret having written it? No. I still look back on it with some fond memories and some good laughs, but I do regret what happened to it, and I wish that it had been otherwise. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.